guys, I'm Josh Mosman and welcome to another MXA video. This is our 2024 KTM 450 SXF. 60 horsepower on the dyno. This thing is extremely fast and most riders, myself included, can't ride a 450 to its full potential. That's why we built the ultimate KTM 350, also hitting 60 horsepower on the dyno, which is impressive for this bike. In theory, the 350 should be a little bit easier to ride on the track, and in this video, we're gonna put them to the test at Glen Helen Raceway. Lap time comparison, 450 versus 350, 60 horsepower versus 60 horsepower. It has been months in the process of getting ready, the 450 versus 350. The dyno runs are done, and we have the track all to ourselves today for the ultimate test. Jamie, Ellis, why did you build this ultimate 350 60 horsepower machine?
So the KTM 350 is a breadwinner for the shop. People love them in stock trim. They love them whenever we modify them. And this is what we would go racing supercross with as far as the KTM 350. So it's always our goal to build the highest package that we can. And since we own this one, we spent, no money spared on getting this thing to where it is.
What's the difference about this full-on race bike versus a regular 350?
A lot. Horsepower, and torque. We've just maximized everything that is there. So the goal was to, like I said, build the best 350 we could. And at that point, it's not cost effective as if you were to buy a stock 450. You can have this much power in a stock 450 pretty quick. You're still gonna have all that torque that comes with the 450.
Yep.
This thing is on the other side of that for those guys that wanna race Lorettas in the vet class, and they want to get a good start, but then they don't want to sacrifice having a light and nimble motorcycle around the very tough track that is Loretta Lynn's Dude Ranch.
Yeah.
So this thing just hits home for me, and as I am getting older, this is just like, I'm morphing to this being the machine of machines. What we're going to learn today is, what does torque really do on the track?
Yep.
Does that affect better lap times? Does that wear you out? I don't know. That's why we're here today. So that's why this project is so cool to me. As the day unfolds, we have this place to ourselves, so you're going to hear sounds at Glen Helen that you haven't heard before from us having the track to ourselves. Yep. And to hear these two motorcycles on track and the comparison stuff we're gonna do, I'm fired up. So it's gonna be a really cool day.
First lap impression. First lap wasn't insane. Second lap was insane. Once you rev this thing, it just keeps going. I have not found the top of the power. Whew, this thing sounds like a factory bike, and it is fun. The track's pretty rough and slick today, so it's definitely a true test of 350 versus 450. I'm trying to catch my breath. Let's do this thing. So the age-old question, which bike is better for you? KTM 350 or KTM 450? 350, always more nimble. As far as weight goes, it's actually 4 pounds lighter on the scales, but it feels much lighter on the track because of less rotating mass inside of the engine. Makes it feel more nimble, easier to hold in ruts, and easier to dodge ruts and bumps. On the track, this rides quite a bit more like a 250F where you have to rev it extremely high into the RPMs. On the dyno, 54 horsepower stock on a KTM 350, where the KTM 450 is 60 horsepower stock. Massive, massive difference. And of course, the torque makes a huge difference as well. After Jamie did all of his mods, this thing bumped up to a 60 horsepower KTM 350. So now there is no excuse on horsepower. Now the big difference is torque, and that is exactly what we felt on the track here today. Track was dry, slippery, but it was actually pretty rough, and there was some good dirt underneath the dry slick stuff, and I had a ton of fun ripping both bikes today. I was a second and a half faster on the KTM 350. We did 2 laps back to back on both bikes, and I was a second and a half each time faster on the 350. So that answered some big questions for me, but we did have more riders. We had a novice level rider in Josh Holley. We also had vet rider in Dennis Stapleton and Ezra Lewis riding with us today. Let's hear from him now. So Josh Holley, he rides a lot of our bikes, but mostly tailors to the 250, 350 bikes. You own the 350, and we put him in the novice category. What was your experience on the 2 bikes today?
Yeah, today the track was pretty gnarly. It was slick, it was bumpy. They didn't, redo it from the day before. And I jumped on the 450 and it just felt like it was out of sorts. A lot harder to control for me. Jumped on the 350, immediately felt more comfortable. I would say even through the turns and stuff, like standing, I felt like I had more control there. And just the way that the power rolled on, a lot smoother. So it's a hands down, I think, choice for me to go 350. I think I can do that one every day, day in, day out. So lap times were exactly the same. 350 I rode after, which was impressive because I was kind of worn out when I jumped on the 350. I thought I was gonna be slower.
All right.
Same time.
I like it. Dennis is our vet test rider. Dennis is probably the most picky test rider we have on the crew. Not probably, definitely the most picky guy we have on the crew. He rides 450s a lot, and he also had a crash the other day, so it's kind of hard to convince him to come out here. But what was your experience with the 2 bikes?
Well, first off, I always seem to struggle a little bit on the standard 350. I'm always kind of in between gears on jump faces, and that's kind of like a no-go zone for me. So I always jump on the 450. Today, the track's slick, dry, but we're no strangers to Glen Helen dry, slick, dry. We're out here all the time.
Yep.
I felt like I could roll the turns and kind of pop some of the square edge bumps a little easier on the 450 today. So I'm probably the odd duck out in the group. I know everyone was really favoring the 350. 450, I just felt like I shifted a little less. Some places where it was slick, I could point and shoot.
Yep.
I could just kind of manhandle the 450 and I kind of know what to expect.
Yep.
But there's a spot down by the creek where you're turning, and the 450 every time I would just be out in the ruts and I could do nothing about it. Where the 350 was super light feeling through there, and I've been trying to miss this hole all day. My very first lap on the 350, I cut back and went right to the right where I wanted to go all day on the 450. So that was impressive. And the way Jamie has this bike built, I felt like the chassis worked a little better. The fork and shock matched a little bit better for me, especially coming down the hill. And then also I didn't have an issue. The bike revved out far enough that I didn't have to shift till I was either in the air or already landed for the next section. Going up the hill, the power was plenty good enough for me on the 350 to really be able to twist the throttle all the way, which is a good feeling. You know, a lot of people think that they twist the throttle all the way, but most likely they're not. But the 350 did give me that feeling at Glen Helen today where I could hold the throttle wide open for a split second and kind of feel like that hero for a moment. But overall, my lap times were within the same second. I think I beat myself on the 450 by a 10th, but I didn't feel super fast through the turns on the 350. So my ceiling on the 450 is maxed. I have a lot of room for improvement on the 350. So after a full day, I think I could set a faster lap time on the 350, but I just prefer to be lazy and ride the 450.
Team 350 consists of me, Ezra, and Josh Holley. I was a second and a half faster. Ezra was 2 seconds faster, and Josh Holley was about 1/10 second faster on the 350. Team 450, that's Dennis Stapleton. Same time on both bikes, but he likes the 450.
There you go.
Of course, MXA, we love to ride stock bikes, but we didn't want to put the ultimate KTM 350 up against a bone stock 450, so Jamie did add a lot of tasteful mods to this 2024 KTM 450. From the top, ODI handlebars, ODI MX Pro lock-on grips, also the Moto seat cover, Dunlop MX34 tires, super light sprocket, TM chain guide and slider, and also some titanium scar foot pegs on here, making sure the contact points are nice with the seat, handlebars, and foot pegs. Of course, we have a Pro X chain on here. We got a 14:52 sprocket ratio. Works Connection hooked us up with some sweet parts as well. The floating rear axle, this is actually huge for the chassis, giving you a little more comfort on the track. Works Connection gave us other cool little bits up here on the handlebars and the Pro Launch starting device to make sure we had two bikes that were competitive off the line. Other than that, suspension was bone stock. He puts a Yoshimura exhaust system on here. And Jamie, what did you do to the mapping?
Like you said, bringing the 450 out to compete against the 350, we did the most tasteful mods that we feel that would be a benefit to the 450. So we went into the stock ECU, we got it on the dyno, we laid everything out to make everything as smooth as possible, right? So like we're building up one and we're not suppressing one, but we're making it as efficient as good as it could be. So with the stock ECU tune on this one, we're able to get less engine braking out of it, you know, more connection and an easier to get to the power rideability function. So pair that with like the intake coming in, we put a twin air filter system in it, as well as the Yoshimura exhaust. So we kind of controlled air in and out, and then did a nice ECU tune along with our high flow exhaust flange that creates a little bit more bottom end connectivity to the 450 unit. So using of VP fuels, we chose T4. Which is a cheaper price point. It's not as powerful as, you know, what we're using in the 350, but with having the power there, we chose a good safe fuel that's able to get the job done and not hit the wallet as hard as maybe what it would on this one.
So the 350 has all the same mods as the 450, except you went all out on the engine. What'd you do?
In any motor application, the power is going to come mostly from the piston up. You can balance the crankshaft for vibration reasons, makes a little bit more of a better riding motorcycle. You can rim the transmission. There's plenty of stuff you can do down there, but it's all very fractional. So the bigger horsepower gains are going to come from the piston up. So in this one, we have a custom JE piston that we design and they make for us, as along with marrying that with a different intake snorkel, twin air filter system, Yoshimura exhaust, our porting to the head, which does some welding and some, you know, kind of makes the head a little bit smaller in certain areas. And so that is where the real power and performance is going to come from, is from that piston valve train up. So this bike is running Pro 7, where its counterpart, the 450, is using a lesser performing fuel of T4. So we wanted to kind of like do everything we had to do on this motorcycle to get it up to 60 horse, and then do the tasteful mods required to get that one up to 60 horse, so that this comparison was more of a torque comparison than it was a CC shootout between big bore and little bore.
And you have the Vortex ECU on here. Of course, you're known for tuning those things like a magician. And besides that, you put 6 extra horsepower, up from 54 to 60 horsepower out of this thing. So pretty impressive. But the real question is, what's the durability like? You said you didn't touch the cam chain. Rev limiter's all the same, right?
Yeah, so we have customers that have been around 50 hours with no issues. We're doing routine top ends so far. This bike is only, you know, relatively a year old. So 50 hours is a decent amount of riding for a vet guy or anybody to put on a motorcycle in 1 year. So we've had really good success. If you know anything about the KTM 350, it's a workhorse. You change the oil regularly and you keep air filters clean, and this thing goes and goes and goes. So we expect it to go much further than that, but don't really plan on pushing it to failure.
I like it.
So that's where we're at.
So of course, the question is, what does it cost? If you want a more budget-friendly bike, the KTM 450 already comes stock pretty well ready to race with the mods that Jamie Ellis did and all the extra bolt-on parts like handlebars, start device, and the Yoshi exhaust system. This will be about $3,000 to $4,000 extra on top of your KTM 450. If you want to go all out on a KTM 350, you can spend as much money as you want. It's like building a race engine for Supercross. You could do that yourself through Twisted Development, $5,000 to $12,000. The range is really endless on how much money you could could spend. This bike, with all the bolt-on parts and with the engine going all out, is about the $5,000 to $6,000 range that we're spending on top of already having to buy the bike. At the end of the day, even though they both have 60 horsepower, they are still two completely different bikes with power characters that are totally different on the track. Let's look at the dyno chart. All right, so here's the dyno chart. Both bikes you can see are 60 horsepower, 60.3 for the 350, 59.8 for the 450. Big difference though, the torque number, 31 foot-pounds of torque and 37 foot-pounds of torque. On the dyno chart here, this is the horsepower curve and this is the torque curve, two completely different power bands. You can see where the KTM 450 hits strong at the bottom end and the low end power, and at 7,000 RPM, the 450 is already hitting 50 horsepower, where the KTM 350 is down here at around 38 range. And that's what you're feeling on the track. You have to respect the power on the 450 so much more, where the 350 you can rev it out and continue to rev it all the way to 13,000 plus RPM, where the KTM 450 hits strong early, but peaks early around 11,500 RPM. So now that we've seen the dyno chart, we can see that the power character is completely different between the 450 and 350 machines. You have to respect that 450 power so much more, and you're not able to ride it as hard, and you're not able to push the limits on it. Where this 350, I felt like I could miss every rock, miss every rut, miss every bump that I wanted to, and put the bike exactly where I wanted it on the track. For me, I'm trying to make the decision, what bike should I race at the AMA Nationals this year? I kind of punished myself last year by doing 3 different bikes at 3 different rounds, and I'm trying to think, what is the safest, easiest, smartest way for me to qualify for the motos? Today I proved it to myself that I'm actually faster on the 350 and a bike that's more of an RPM based machine rather than the torque machine that the KTM 450 is. But everybody has that question. For me, the question is, can I get a good qualifying lap when the track is rough, rutted, and deep in the morning? And the question is, can I get a good start on the 350 as well? Ezra and I drag raced down the start today. It's definitely a little bit harder on the 350. I think the 450 is always going to have an advantage in the start spot, but for me, I know I'll be able to make it up on the rest of the track, and I'll be smarter and safer on the 350. The other question though is, what bike is best for you? I figured out the 350 is best for me, but Dennis Stapleton, a little more lazy on the track. He's better on the KTM 450 today, and I think that's the question that you have to ask yourself at home. Which bike is better for you? Which one are you better suited on to go racing with? When it comes to starts, I think they're pretty close. When it comes to qualifying, I think for me, I'm better on the 350, but now the question is over to you. If we have any people watching this video who already own 350s, let us know in the comments what you think about the 350 and if you're considering upgrading your bike to a horsepower monster like this one. So thank you guys for watching. Big topic, big question, awesome bikes. Thanks for watching. We'll see you in the next video. Good boy. Good boy. What you got there, Welcome?
Like one.
That's adorable.
Hey, come here.